This will be a forum format, meaning it's not a debate, so there won't be rebuttal for any of the questions. There will be an opportunity for each candidate to introduce themselves with a 2-minute presentation as we begin. Following that, we have the questions that will be asked, and each candidate will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to respond to those questions. Clay, from left to right is Clay Chisholm, Steve Anderson, and Chris Hammond. And we've agreed prior to the meeting that it's just going to be kind of random order. Clay will go first with the first question, and then Steve with the second, and then Chris with the third question, and we'll just go in rotation to be as fair as possible in that regard. And we'll begin with Clay Chisholm to open with your 2-minute presentation.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Crime Stoppers for hosting this event for the community. Thank you, Marcia, Dean, any other Crime Stopper members. For those of you I don't know, my name's Clay Chisholm. Myself and my wife Jennifer, who's in the audience here, we're both lifelong Callaway County residents. I love this community. This is where I'm from. This is where I hope to stay. I'm a 16-year veteran at your sheriff's office here in Callaway County. I started off in the jail, served approximately 5 months as a corrections officer. I worked the road for 13 years. In the last 3 years, I have served as the lieutenant in the investigations unit. In the midst of those primary duties, I've also been the neighborhood watch coordinator, evidence custodian, evidence technician, field training officer, and the grant administrator for several grants. My education consists of a bachelor's in criminal justice from Central Missouri State University, which is now known as University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. I have a master's degree in criminal justice administration from Columbia College, and then several specializations such as certified to work Mid-Missouri Major Case Squad. Your sheriff's office is an extremely busy sheriff's office here in Callaway County. As it stands now, we're averaging about 17,000 calls per year countywide. Them range from anything from barking dog complaints to murders. The sheriff's office is unique to law enforcement. It is not a police department. It's not a highway patrol. The sheriff's office has several additional responsibilities other than the men and women you see in the patrol cars out here protecting you on the streets. We have civil process, we have prisoner extradition, we have sex offender registration, we have the carry concealed weapon permits, we deal with some probate and mental health court issues, and we have a 108-bed jail. Unfortunately, lots of times people forget about the jail. The jail is half of our operation. Again, I would ask for your support. I'm experienced in all operations of the Sheriff's Office, and I want to provide professional law enforcement service to all members throughout Callaway County. Thank you.
Steve Anderson.
Good evening. I'd like to also thank the Crime Stoppers and the community members for coming out. I'm Steve Anderson. I have 28 years experience in law enforcement. I started out in the United States Air Force as a law enforcement specialist, and I came home. Also have a bachelor's degree in business management. My family's been here since the 1800s, and I don't plan to go anywhere, and I want to serve this community like I have for the last 4 years, not counting the 4 years in the military. My primary goal is, if you choose to give me the privilege to be your sheriff, is to work on reducing our crime rate and our response times. This is something we can do with what staff we have and the budget we have. It just has to be done in a different way than what we're doing. Thanks again for coming out, and hope you all come out and vote too on August 2nd.
Chris Hammond.
I'm Chris Hammond. I'm originally from Jeff City. I'm not a Callaway lifelong resident, but I transplanted here to be closer to my son who lived in Fulton. I've been involved in all his sports in Fulton for the last 13 years that he's been involved in sports up here, from t-ball to football. I am a military veteran, Army. I spent 5 years in the Army. I worked for a distribution center where we did all secret documents, so I managed employees and all the secret documents that came into the entire regiment. Came back to Jeff City, where I was living, went back to school, got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration from Columbia College, received my master's this year from Columbia College in criminal justice administration. I'm currently enrolled in my PhD program at Walden University, trying to complete that as well. Law enforcement, I started in Versailles with Versailles PD, worked full-time in reserve there, worked for Miller County Sheriff's Office, served on the CERT team there, worked for New Bloomfield Police Department as an officer, then a corporal, and then when John Hatfield retired, I took over as chief. Been there ever since. I currently work for a service company managing anywhere from 15 to 18 technicians on a day-to-day basis over 5 states. I do everything from budgeting to writing safety policy to workman's comp and everything in between. All the HR, all the hiring, all the firing, all the training, everything comes through me. Originally when I started with that company, there was 3 of us. I've built it to the 50 plus we have now. I would appreciate your vote, and I want to thank Crime Stoppers for having us today.
Thank you, gentlemen. With the first question, Steve, you will go first with the first question. It's a 2-part question. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing sheriffs in rural counties like Callaway, and what will you do to meet that challenge?
Well, Callaway's kind of unique in a lot of ways. It's a big county. It's the 8th largest in the state. So there's an obstacle in itself. The biggest thing we have is a lot of drug activity, which I know we have a Mustang officer that works that, and I would encourage that to be still in place. Our theft crimes, our theft crimes and burglaries need to be focused on, and our response time needs to come down. And I realize that, you know, the manpower is there to do it with, it just needs to be arranged better.
Thank you. Chris.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I will. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing sheriffs in rural counties like Callaway, and what will you do to meet that challenge?
Well, with any agency, staffing is always an issue. Being the size that Callaway is, you know, an 800-plus square mile county with 17 deputies or whatever it is, they're spread thin. I'm going to work with the South in that Holt Summit area. I've talked to a law enforcement official down there and some other people that are involved, and we want to place a few more deputies south. I've also looked at zoning between 70 and 54, the way the county roads are labeled. You can put a deputy in each zone and work together in those zones, like some of the bigger counties do, to reduce response times.
Thank you. Clay, I'll repeat the question. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing sheriffs in rural counties like Callaway, and what will you do to meet that challenge?
I will add to Chris's statement to begin with that we do currently have zoning. Depending on staffing, we run 3 zones or 4 zones, and when we run 4 zones, 2 of them zones are down south. With any rural county, property crime and drugs are the main problem, and they go hand in hand. People don't burglarize your house and steal your flat screen television to take home and put on their wall. They steal your television to go out here and sell for $40 on the street corner for drugs. Keeping the property crime and the drugs to a level that's acceptable, that's a challenge. You're never going to get rid of it. You just have to try to keep it under control. Another major issue in this county that the sheriff is going to face is the jail. Here in the next couple of years, we're looking to have to spend probably $300,000 to $400,000 in the jail on repairs to keep it where it's a safe and efficient operation. And I would just reiterate, as a sheriff, it's a 2-part operation. It's not just about the road and investigations, it's about the jail too. And the next sheriff's going to have concerns on both ends of that spectrum.
Thank you. With the second question, the next question, Chris, you'll start it off. Would you continue to keep Callaway County Sheriff's Department a member of the Mustang Task Force?
Yes, I would. Mustang works very well in the communities. The members of Mustang, I've actually worked with them in New Bloomfield, and I know they work well in Holt Summit, Avals, and all the areas that they're active in. I think Mustang is a great thing. They reduce some of the drug crime and get some of those individuals off the street.
Clay?
Most definitely. Mustang has been an excellent resource for Callaway County. We do have one officer assigned to Mustang. If that officer was on his own, there's no way he or she could do what they do alone without having the additional resources that being part of a task force brings to the table. By being part of a task force, you have more state and federal resources available to assist in your operations. I will say, as ever who the next sheriff is, though, they are going to have a plan B that if Mustang ever went away. Many agencies in Mustang, not ours, but many agencies in Mustang are completely grant funded. Grants have been drying up in the drug world because of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. So again, yes, I would keep us in Mustang, but the next sheriff needs to be prepared to make decisions should Mustang or the task force go away if that grant funding dries up to where other agencies can't contribute to the cost.
Steve?
I would definitely keep Mustang. I think it's been an asset since day one. I've always advocated that both department, the sheriff's department and the police department, be involved. You cannot draw that much resource from any other source, and we'll definitely keep that active and maybe expand it if we can afford it.
Thank you. Next question, Clay, you will answer first. What will you do to make sure you have the best coverage your agency size can support for our very large county?
Geography is the biggest challenge at 842 square miles. We redid the zones approximately 2 years ago. Depending on the staffing, again, we have either 3 zones or 4 zones if there's 4 road deputies on. I would be willing to look at those zones and make some adjustments as needed. As sheriff, I would also be willing to adopt what's commonly referred to as hotspot policing. And if there's a certain area in the county that's posing more of a problem than the other, you may have to short one end of the county at night to provide for the other end of the county. You have to put your resources where they're needed. Unfortunately, you have to be at full staff to make the zones work the way we want them to work. Recruitment and retainment of deputies and corrections officers in the jail, for that matter, is extremely difficult. And if anyone has heard of the post-Ferguson effect, we're dealing with it with retainment and recruitment of deputies, or recruitment and retainment of deputies. Most police academies across the state that were running 25 or 30 students through a class are now running between 10 and 15 students per class. The applicant pool is not there, and as sheriff, it makes my stomach hurt to think we would have to lower the standards we expect a police officer to be.
Steve, you want me to repeat the question?
Please.
What would you do to make sure you have the best coverage your agency size can support for our very large county?
I would do a management evaluation of all positions, making sure we're using every personnel as far as post-certified personnel in the proper positions, and then try to assign them the best possible positions to put more people on the road to be able to respond and cut down the response time.
Thank you. Chris?
I'll add to what Clay said. I've sat down with the Jackson County Sheriff, Mike Sharp. He's going to be taking over the Sheriff's Association, and that applicant pool is going to get better. They're going to change some of the standards for applicants into the academy. He's got some exciting ideas that are coming down the pike. I would say you have to look at the resources you have available, look at everything as a whole, and then you can decide where you want to put those resources at which time. You can also involve local police departments, give more of a community policing attitude to the county, and get everyone involved and reduce some of that property crime. Business owners, forums, things like that, where community leaders are involved, it works.
Thank you. Next question, and Steve, you will respond first. What do you see as the biggest threat to the citizens of Callaway County, and do you have a plan to work on it?
I see the biggest threat is your crimes generated because, like Creighton has mentioned, you know, that they don't generate the burglaries and the thefts to go and put their stuff in their house. They generate it to support a habit. The only way we can fight that is to stay in Mustang and to work with the courts and the civic organizations in the community to use drug court as much as possible, try to turn these people's lives around, and to try to reduce the number of drug users out there. That would be my main focus, is to get the community more involved in every aspect we can.
Thank you. Chris, what do you see as the biggest threat to the citizens of Callaway County, and do you have a plan to work on it?
I would say as a threat to Callaway County, you're getting more terrorism. Maybe it hasn't hit Callaway County yet, but it's working its way into the United States. As a plan of action, I think you need to get an emergency response plan dedicated to every agency in this area that they are ready to respond to it.
Thank you. What do you see as the biggest threat to the citizens of Callaway County, and do you have a plan to work on it? Clay.
On the local level, we're already seeing it. We have more and more of the criminal element from Jeff City and Cole County sneaking up into Holt Summit, New Bloomfield. We have more of the criminal element from Columbia sneaking over across the Cedar Creek into Millersburg and Stevens in that area. Again, working with the county commission, having a sheriff who has a good relationship with the county commission and working on the staffing levels and getting the road deputies out there to be seen, work cases, and try to prevent crime. On the federal level, Chris hit on it. It's everywhere. We're all susceptible to terrorism. I will add that for the last several years, myself and Sergeant Shannon Jeffries have been serving as the incident commanders out at the UE plant for all of the terrorism drills. Although I can't go into specifics because it's protected information, we do drill out there a lot, and we do have plans in place. I just can't discuss it because it's protected information.
Thank you. Next question, and Chris, you will be the first to respond. And this is actually a three-part question, so we might allow a little extra time. I don't think anybody will argue with that. What is the most significant change you would make if you are elected sheriff? And the follow-ups will be, will that change have a financial impact? And if so, how will it be funded? First part, what is the most significant change you would like to make if you are elected sheriff?
Well, I would like to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement. As Clay elaborated, the Ferguson effect has hit every agency. People don't trust law enforcement anymore. More people run, more people try to get away, more people shoot. Crimes are getting more violent because they don't trust law enforcement.
And will that change have a financial impact? And if so, how will it be funded?
There's always ways to meet with the community and to bring them to the part of the conversation of the sheriff's office. It doesn't cost you anything. I've already met with several church leaders. We're working on some youth programs right now to reduce some of those individuals that may be troubled, to maybe lead them on a better path so they don't end up in the prison system, court system, wherever they may end up.
Thank you. And Clay?
Can you repeat that, Steve?
Yeah, I sure will. What is the most significant change you would like to make if you are elected sheriff? And the follow-up, if it applies, will that change have a financial impact? And if so, how will it be funded?
First of all, I'm going to throw out there that since I'm an in-house candidate, I get accused of being part of the establishment and not someone who's going to make change. I'll be the first to say that I feel like the sheriff's office is on pretty settled ground. I feel like we have a good foundation. There's a reason the last 3 sheriffs have all done 16 years apiece. Sometimes when you have an old house, you have to tear it down, you have to completely rebuild. Sometimes that old house has a good foundation, sometimes you just need to do a little remodeling. I don't think our house needs tore down. We could probably do some little remodeling down the road if the staff and the finances allowed. But we can't do anything that costs money without the blessing of the county commission. The things I would like to do, and the funding is already there, it's guaranteed, so I'll put it out there. I'm not going to make false promises. We need a K-9 unit in this county. I've believed that for several years. That would help us with the fight against drugs. By helping the fight against drugs, we help the fight against property crimes.
Thank you. And Steve, what do you see, or excuse me, what is the most significant change you would like to make if you are elected sheriff? And will that change have a financial impact? And if so, how will it be funded?
I, as sheriff, would try to get on the road more. I know there's administrative duties that have to be done by the sheriff and the chief deputy, but even if it means longer hours and longer weeks, I'm willing to do that. I look at, if you give me the privilege and the honor to be your sheriff, I'm looking at a 50-hour work week every week. I'm committed to doing that. A lot of that time I hope to be on the road and out there supporting my deputies and backing them up. And the same cause, because I'm the leader, I expect the chief deputy to do the same thing. That's the first two FX. That would not cost us anything. The chief deputy and the sheriff, you know, the sheriff is elected official. He serves and works as many hours as he selects and schedules. Chief deputy is the command staff. Under federal law, they don't have to have overtime to a certain point. I wouldn't want to work at chief deputy to that point, but sometimes it may be necessary.
Okay. Next question, and I think it's back to you.
It is. I had the last
I
one.
lost track.
You had the last
I
one.
lost track,
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Well, I'm going to say it's back to you, Clay.
I'm game.
Okay. Do you feel that body cameras are a positive development in law enforcement?
There's pros and cons, as with any resource or technical advance, but yes. We have actually been testing body cams for the last 3 years. Before Ferguson, we were already testing them. I support the concept of body cameras. We're ready to move forward with body cameras. We have the blessing of the county commission to get the funding for the body cameras. Here's why we have taken a time out. The Missouri Open Records Law, also known as the Sunshine Law, is way behind times, and it has not caught up with this technology of body cameras. As it stands right now, if I have a body camera and I come into your house, once the criminal investigation is complete, or there isn't a criminal investigation, we just happen to come to your house for a call, that body camera footage is public information, and anyone in this room can go to the Callaway Sheriff's Office and get body cam footage of inside your house. We don't feel that's right. We feel like the citizens and taxpayers of this county have the right to privacy, and just because they call the police, the inside their house, God forsakes their kids, shouldn't be on the news. When the state decides, when the General Assembly decides to fix the open records law, I think we'll be ready to proceed.
Thank you. Steve, do you feel that body cameras are a positive development in law enforcement?
Yes, I do. There is the issue of violating the person that called you out to their house as far as their privacy and their rights. However, the pros and cons, in this case the pros, of being on the body camera and video in the car are a lot more than what the cons are. He is right. They can get hold of that footage because it is public record. But I would be willing as administrator to go ahead and get those body cameras in place. And I'm basing that off the experience of when the Fulton Police Department went to car video. All your old experienced officers did not want those car videos. They were scared of them because they were afraid they would get caught doing something wrong. My theory, and I was with them, I agreed with them, but we found out that they saved us and they saved the public a lot more than they hindered either one of us. If you have nothing to hide, there's no reason as an officer not to have that camera on and that video running. It'll save you more than it'll ever hurt you.
Thank you. And Chris, do you feel that body cameras are a positive development in law enforcement?
Yes and no. Because of the records retention issues and the stuff with the Sunshine Law, I think until the legislature gets up to speed and puts those actions in place and defines what video is available to the public, they do work. We have used them. We got a couple on a grant here a year ago, and it's already saved us on a couple of cases. So I do think it works when used correctly. I also have heard in other states, other officers have selectively used it, turned it off and on at their leisure, and in that case, it's not working correctly. But it has good and bad in it.
Thank you. For the last question, ask our timekeeper. I think we should allow them this to be a closing statement, and let them go 2 minutes.
Got hung up on the table. So I moved.
Been there, done that. Okay. Steve, you will be the first responder for this final question, and you will be allowed 2 minutes for this question. What qualities will you bring to the position of sheriff if you are elected?
First quality I bring is who I am, the type of person I am. I can relate to about anybody and everybody. I've learned over 20 years of experience how to diffuse any situation. That person in charge of the sheriff's department, the sheriff, has to be able to do that. My experience, 20 years in law enforcement, and my degree in business management are all enhancements to what I am and how I do and manage things. I lost my train of thought.